we are thrilled to have all of you here with us at the Taste of Innovation, hosted by Chicago Innovation and presented by Accenture. And here with me, this gentleman on my right, he is the co-founder of Chicago Innovation. He's the president of innovation consulting firm Marciano Innovation. And as it relates to food innovation, he also knows a thing or two about investing in restaurants. And Tom often says that his best two investments ever, one was investing in Boca Restaurant Group, and the other, I believe, Tom, was hiring me 12 years ago, as you like to say.
I think you're right, Luke. Well, welcome, everyone. And tonight we are so excited to have the Taste of Innovation. You know, 21 years ago, when I started Chicago Innovation, its purpose was really to educate, connect, and educate innovators of all types. I mean, of all types, from for-profit, nonprofit, large corporations, small startups, and the like. And what I've seen over the last 2 decades has been the amazing restaurant and food industry in Chicago really become, in my view, one of the most disruptive and one of the most innovative in the entire country.
And we know the food industry locally innovates in so many different forms. It's sourcing, it's farming, it's distributing, it's packaging, it's eating, which is my personal favorite. It's food experiences, and our panelists today are going to talk about many of these topics and share their perspectives on the future of food.
And tonight we have great innovators that you'll hear from in just a second. And in fact, it reminds me, 20 years ago, when I went to this one restaurant at the corner of Halsted and Willow in Chicago, and I saw this good-looking guy behind the bar, and I had a drink, and then I decided, well, I'll come back another time, and another time, and another time. And that was Boca, where I've been going now for the last 20 years, and it was Kevin Bain, who was actually then just opening the restaurant and opening the bar, and it's been a great relationship. So for 30 seconds, I want to tell you about Chicago Innovation's programs, because we would love to have you all become involved with them besides attending our events. The first is the Women's Mentoring Co-op that we've had in existence now for 7 years, and we've had over 800 women participate in this wonderful mentoring program. The second is called Ageless Innovators, which is the first ever intergenerational co-mentoring program where we'll pair an older adult with a younger adult for a 6-month cohort. The third is called the Chicago Student Invention Convention, where we teach teachers the problem-solving process, and K through 8th graders then come up with their own inventions and problem solve, and it's just a absolutely fantastic program. And then the fourth is called the Ladder, which is for Black and Latine professionals, where we help from a mentoring standpoint, help them move up their career ladder, and also have them be connected more to our community. There's 2 other initiatives, brand new ones this year. One is called the Climate Change Initiative, which for the first time at the Chicago Innovation Awards this year, we will have the Climate Champion Award, as well as other panels and discussions on the need for climate change. And the last is Turn the Page on Age, which is aimed at combating ageism in the workplace. And you may have seen some of our buses for Turn the Page on Age, along with Chicago Innovation nominate your organization or your company. But the point is, please get involved with our community. We'd love to have you involved.
Yep. And in addition to all those programs, initiatives, if you're someone who values events, relationship building, meeting other interesting people, leaders, innovators in the city, we have a whole year-long calendar of events you can see in your pamphlet every month, in-person events, virtual events, all bringing Chicago's innovators together. And all this, I might add, is supported by a great group of sponsors that I just want to recognize and celebrate them all. Many of them are here in attendance, starting with our diamond sponsors. So thank you to, I'm going to start with Dell and Intel, because I know we had some people even flying from Texas to come tonight. Jill told me that as long as good food is around, she will make that trip every single time. There's also Wintrust. Thank you, Wintrust, Walgreens, SMS Assist, Molex, and Accenture. Gold sponsor, Comcast Business. Silver sponsor, Vetter Price. Bronze sponsors, Crown Castle, Thompson Coburn, Energy BBDO, Gensler and Terra, and Forcheck. And then our media partners that do a great job helping us spread the word, Intersection, Clear Channel Outdoor, WBBM News Radio, and NBC Chicago. And lastly, our in-kind sponsors, starting with Boca Restaurant Group. So if you liked the food, that was all Boca Restaurant Group. Cooper's Hawk, which provided the wine. And then also, thank you to Fund It. Now, to kick things off, I will be bringing up to the stage our presenting sponsor of this evening, which is Accenture, to give a little mini talk on something that they call the Store of Tomorrow. So, to lead that conversation, please give a warm welcome to Ray Marciano, Managing Director, North America Retail Stores and Growth, and our good friend, Cassidy Beadle, Client Innovation Designer and Lead at Accenture. So, come on up.
All right, well, thank you, Luke and Tom, for the warm welcome. We so appreciate it. I'm very excited to be here with you all tonight to kick off this amazing event. And what better way to bring us all together in person this evening than to celebrate, talk about, and of course, eat food. As Luke said, I'm Cassidy Beadle. I lead our retail industry innovation team within Accenture. And as part of that team, we have a group that has been focused on food for the past few years. And the Chicago ecosystem here has a great variety of businesses that we can bring together and perspectives that we want to share out in a diverse way. As part of that, we are excited that we're building out our new Accenture office tower. It will be open later this year. And within that, we have an innovation gallery and a future of food exhibit that will showcase all of our thought leadership. And we would be happy to host you and talk about that, share out about it, and hopefully we will see you there sometime soon. I do want to take a moment and thank Chicago Innovation, Luke and Tom and the team. It's been a great partnership over the last few years with all of our events, programs, and creating thought leadership, and we hope to continue that in the future. We are grateful to be here tonight as the presenting sponsor, as well as to share out quickly on some of our thought leadership related to food and grocery, and also to learn from you all and be inspired by our panelists as well. So Ray, I'll hand it to you.
Thanks, Cassidy. So we want to talk about stores, and I spend all my time at Accenture, been there for about 18 years now, and thinking about stores. And what I really like to talk about is really shopping, and shopping is evolving. All of us shop today, primarily it's the thing that's either in your pocket, in your jacket pocket, or in your purse. But the way our stores are set up, most of them haven't changed since our grandparents, especially if you think about our grocery store. That store that you walk into, you grab the cart, you roam up and down the aisles. While the products may have changed, the store itself has not. And each of us has changed the way we like to interact with that store, what we expect out of that store, and how we want to buy and shop our product. So we think the time right now is ripe to really change that. And one of the ways we want to do that is really focusing on what we're talking about here, which is around innovation, but also around food. And if you think about what that store that's going to look like in the future, we think it's going to be composed really of sort of like 3 core components. There's an area that's going to be focused on experience. You can think of it as Disneyland in the store, if you will. I was with the retailer last week, and he said what they're trying to do in their store, it's a grocery store down in the south, is they're trying to think of themselves not as a food retailer, they're trying to think of themselves as an entertainment company that sells food. And so we call that the promenade. That's an area to really sort of engage and experience the products that the retailer has to offer. It's a little bit like tonight, where we're getting a chance to experience some innovative food products, bringing those to life from our local artisans. So that's sort of the core of how we see this store evolving. The other area that we think about is this area that we call the aisle. And really it's about taking digitizing all of the product that's in the middle of the store, the aisles of product that we really know what we need already. So those things like how much ketchup you want to buy, or the toilet paper that you're getting. That product, you don't go there and stare at the shelves and say, I'm going to pick this one today. You really know what it is that you're going to buy. So why do I have to walk an aisle to go figure out that product? I can put that on your phone, and we can get that product delivered to you really quickly. And the last area we see changing is this area around what we call the dark store. It's a way to bring all of that to life. Anyone here shop at Foxtrot? That's awesome. So 15 minutes, product delivered to your home. So how do I bring that to life in a mass scale? So this idea about trying to take product, centralize it in a sort of an automated way to move product from that store either to you if you're going to want to pick it up on the curbside, or get it to your home there in anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. So we think this retail environment is going to fundamentally shift, and hope each of you will be a part of it. So thank you so much for some time. I'm going to pass over to Cassie to talk a little bit about some of the opportunities here.
Yeah, so the last thing we wanted to cover was to just bring this to life with some local Chicago examples in our backyard that are starting to play in some of these spaces. Most of the ones up here that we're looking at are in that promenade aspect, so the experiential side. The first one we'll call out is Nutella Cafe on Michigan Avenue. They do a really great job of very tailored, personalized experience. So you can walk in, you can create your own Nutella jar, you can create your own personalized parfait and walk out with that. And they're really focused on offering each individual customer that comes in their own experience. The second example is Foxtrot, which Ray just mentioned. I'm sure you all know they're a local startup that has been growing rapidly the past few years, even outside of Chicago now, and they have reimagined what the convenience store play looks like. So they're very focused on that speed and delivery, like Ray said, but the other awesome thing about them is how they curate products and bring those in. So some of the brands that you see or interact with on Instagram, or some of those direct-to-consumer brands that historically you haven't been able to find locally in a store, are in Foxtrot that you can go experience that, try it out, and have that curated assortment right in your neighborhood. So they also focus on those neighborhoods and how they can merge the offline-online experience and be embedded and ingrained. So they just opened their newest store in Wrigleyville a couple weeks ago. They raffled off Cubs tickets, gave away Cubs merchandise, and really just tried to drive their local community into the store to be that convenience store for them. And then the third one, which just opened this past year, is Dom's Market. It's a grocery market in Lincoln Park. And this one's all really bringing together collectively that promenade experience. So it's the local go-to spot to relax and go with friends. You can get coffee or drink at the bar. They have food stalls and food pop-ups where you can create your own pizza or have local Korean food, or they spotlight local restaurants. And so really just thinking about that leisure shopping experience of how they're driving traffic and then letting people stay and that whole experiential element. So that's kind of the three examples. Like, we could go on and on, right? Amazon Fresh opening in the suburbs, which is a little bit of a nod to a dark store. They have the Dart shopping cart, the smart shopping cart rolling out. Wild Fork, which is a brand new purely frozen food store in River North. That's a little bit of a play to an aisle, maybe a stretch, but super focused on just frozen foods, which is interesting. So we just wanted to bring that to life. I encourage you all to go check these out, experience them, and see what's up and happening in our neighborhood related to food and grocery. So thank you again, and Luke, back to you.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Cassie. For an event focused on the future of food, it's only fitting to hear about the store of tomorrow. So thank you for sharing that. So now next we're going to get the show on the road and move on to our panel. So to kick things off, it's my pleasure to introduce the wonderful Kate Sullivan. Now, Kate, as we've learned in the many years we've worked together, Kate is many things. She is a 4-time Emmy Award-winning reporter. She's a world traveler. But the reason why she's here with us tonight is because she's a lifelong foodie. And Kate spent 10 years at the evening news for CBS Chicago. Before that, she was the morning news anchor for CBS New York, which we won't hold against you here in Chicago. We know you got to get started somewhere. But Kate today is the host of To Dine For with Kate Sullivan, a fantastic show as well as a podcast. And tonight, she is reprising her role as the MC and moderator for the Taste of Innovation. So please welcome Kate.
Thank you so much. I am many things. I love that. Aren't we all, right? Aren't we all many things? First of all, wow, isn't it nice to be back together, right? I have missed this. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Tong, for having me back as your MC for the Taste of Innovation. It is wonderful to be here and wonderful to be in your midst. By a show of hands, tell me who has been to a new restaurant that they have not tried in the past 3 to 6 months. Okay. Okay, I am in good company then. What I do now, I used to be a news reporter and anchor, but what I do now sits at the intersection of food and innovation. I use people's favorite restaurants as a jumping off point for a conversation on what they created. So I have a show on PBS called To Dine For. It's also on Amazon Prime. And the premise of the program is to interview people who sit at the intersection of innovation, and then take them to their favorite restaurant to find out why they love their favorite restaurant, and then to hear the story of what they created. I believe that someone's favorite restaurant begins to tell their story. It might be a favorite neighborhood joint, it might be a local haunt, it might be something very elevated and upscale. But wherever you choose would begin to tell your story, your culture, where you're from. This past season, we interviewed Jeannie Gang, the great Chicago architect, who is currently building the tallest building in the world by a female architect. And we went to Brandy in River North, a very beautiful, elevated French restaurant. On the first season of the program, we interviewed Jason Maiden from the Wild Wild Hundreds of south side of Chicago, who became the first black intern at Nike. He then went on to create the highest grossing shoe of all time at Nike. Jason Maiden from Chicago. He chose Giordano's. Why? He can certainly go to a lot more elevated restaurants than Giordano's, but it reminded him of home. That's why he chose it. And so we heard his story of creation, his story coming from south side of Chicago to really one of the most elevated positions at Nike through the lens of his favorite restaurant. Food and innovation do intersect, and we are going to hear it in spades from our three panelists today. Two incredible restaurateurs and one businessman who really is innovating in his own space. I'd like to briefly bring them up and start the conversation, if that's okay with you. Does that sound like a plan? All right, let's do it. Kevin Bain almost needs no introduction. If you have lived in Chicago, you have most definitely, or most likely, eaten at one of his restaurants. He is a James Beard award-winning restaurateur who has opened 30 restaurants in 27 years. How is that even possible? Rohini Day is the founder of Let's Talk Women, an award-winning restaurateur who has founded a movement of over 600 women restaurateurs, and she has co-founded the James Beard Award Foundation's Women's Program. Thomas Jonas is the CEO and co-founder of Nature's Fine, who is truly innovating in his own space, and I can't wait to hear more. Let's bring them up to the stage and begin the conversation. All right, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I am going to begin this conversation the way I begin all of my conversations on To Dine For, by asking each of you your absolute favorite restaurant, which I know has got to be incredibly difficult for two of you.
That's a hard question.
I'm going to start with you, Rohini. Let's usually I say wherever in the world. So if the guest wants to go to Barcelona, like Jose Andres wanted to go, we go. But I'm going to keep it just to Chicago. Where is your favorite restaurant in Chicago?
Okay, this cannot be an objective answer, flat out. But I'm someone who's traveled to 55 countries, used to be at the World Bank and then McKinsey and then restaurants. And so the only reason I'm in restaurants is my love of food, and I'm partial to Indian cuisine, want to spread the gospel. And I'm just going to pick my own, flat out. It's Vermilion.
Your own restaurant. I love it.
Vermilion.
Vermilion.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm not letting you pick one of your own restaurants. You have to pick something else.
You know, Maya Angelou has that great quote, which is, the first time that you meet someone, you won't remember the exact dialogue, but you'll remember how they made you feel. And I think great restaurants have that same kind of feeling to them. You know, one of my, I guess you would call him one of my competitors in this business, but Dottie Medea is one of the great restaurateurs here in town from One Off Hospitality. And the month before Boca opened, almost 20 years ago, Avec opened, and Donnie's one of those guys that makes you feel good right away. So I'll pick Avec.
Great answer. What about you, Thomas?
Well, I'm sitting next to two restaurateurs, so it's a loaded question. But I have to say, so I live in Hyde Park, and there is Virtue in Hyde Park, which is a great place.
Amazing.
But I have a lot of very fond family memories from Little Goat, because this is a great place when you wake up as with two kids early on a Sunday morning, where you can actually go and have a great brunch. So lots of family memories.
I love
there.
it. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. James Beard was once asked that question, where is your favorite restaurant? And he said, it's your favorite too. It's the one that makes you feel at home. And that gets very much to what you said, Kevin, about how a restaurant makes you feel.
Well, I can relate to Rohini's answer because she watched her family grow up in her own restaurant. So, Boca's been open 20 years. My oldest is 18. Phil Marenthal owned Boca before we had it, and Blue Mesa was there. Anybody remember Blue Mesa?
Yeah.
Show of hands. Phil Marenthal walked in about 3 years into Boca being open, and he just started crying because he was looking at every corner of that restaurant and imagining his family growing up in that restaurant.
Yeah. They evoke emotion, don't they? Restaurants evoke emotion. They're stories.
They do.
They're the stories of our lives. Well, I want to jump into why we're here, and that is you were looking at three innovators, all for very different reasons, even though food is the common thread. And I want to talk about Chicago as a place for innovation, specifically in the food scene. How have you seen it, Rohini, play out, and why do you think the city is so fantastic as a hub for innovation?
So, in consulting fashion, I'll pick 3 bullet points. I have seen it explode with exposure ever since the James Beard Foundation Awards came to the city.
Sure.
I mean, we've always had the NRA show, which is magnitudes of order bigger when it comes to the business of food. But I was a trustee for a decade and really pushed to bring the awards here and away from New York, where it was for 25 years at Lincoln Center. And I think it's cast a spotlight and really done justice to who we are. The second reason I'll say Chicago has been extremely innovative is I think it is going well beyond the box of fine dining, which used to be confined to either French derivatives or Italian, or if you were to take a big leap of faith, farm to table. That was the extent of our imagination when it came to fine dining. But now, Chicago is exploding with global flavors. So it doesn't just have to be Japanese or Korean. The acceptance is becoming much more, and I think the world is such an exciting place. Traveling to taste is phenomenal. So those are 2 reasons why I would say it's been really innovative, and I'll just hand over.
Jeffrey Steingarten wrote an article for Vogue, I think it was in '05, and it was the first time I read someone write in print that Chicago was the best restaurant city in America. And one of the reasons that it was getting so much notice was because there was a movement here, and between Grant Achatz at Alinea and Graham Elliott at the time at Avenues and Omar Cantu at Moto, they had taken molecular gastronomy from, Ferran Adria in Madrid and handed it off to Chicago, of all places. So I think that was the match. And then what people came here, the Chicago restaurant scene is symmetrical to who Chicagoans are. A, good Midwestern work ethic, right? Check. And then B, can I cuss for a second? We're fucking nice people, man. I used to brag on it. I was like, our front of the house, I think, crush most other cities because we're actually empathetic about the experience people have inside of our restaurants. When I opened my first restaurant 30 years ago, actually 30 years ago this week, and I was a complete...
Congratulations, that's amazing.
I was a complete moron, just for the record. Total and complete moron. But I had one thing going for me, and that was I really wanted people to have a good time. And I feel that in a lot of Chicago restaurants. So I still think when it comes to nice, that's where we have an edge.
And as Chicago restaurateur insiders, what is the magic, what is the special sauce of starting a restaurant in Chicago that allows it to thrive? Meaning, why do you think this is such a uniquely good place to start a restaurant?
Well, I think that we have more square footage than sometimes you get in New York, so it allows you to do some really great things with design.
So I had one for 10 years in New York. How long do you want me to go? It is so hard. One, the whole niceness point. Two, the privilege of having your own dumpster in your alley. So New York I had a 1 hour time slot from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. to get my porter to take my garbage down in a shared dumpster, and I paid 10 times the amount. And I had to keep my garbage in a refrigerated room up there because otherwise it would violate all health standards. That's just one example. Everything, whether it comes to health inspections, food cost, critics, a fickle consumer, everything. It's hard.
And don't you think the community of restaurateurs, they see each other and they got each other, meaning they got your back? Like, I interviewed Eric Williams from Virtue, and he has this friendship with Mindy Siegel that just kind of came out of nowhere. And it's like they both have each other and they both kind of offer each other feedback, and that's invaluable.
Eric called me today at 11 a.m. I was like, bro, you want to go to lunch? I mean, that just doesn't happen in every city.
And where do you go to lunch?
I couldn't go, but we had to skip. Then we got
That's
our
what we
calendars.
wanna know.
Then we got our calendars out, and we were trying to figure it out.
You moved
I said, let's go to Hyde Park. He goes, dude, there's nothing open for lunch in Hyde Park.
You swayed him over here. Thomas, you came to Chicago about 10 years ago, and the idea for Nature's Find was really just percolating. What has made being here in Chicago such a uniquely innovative place, but also like the right terroir for your business?
Well, so this is the capital of food in America. And I think we need to really get this down. And it's not actually just fine dining, it's also fine dining. But if you think historically, this is the capital of the food basket of America. And historically, everything came here. So Nature's Find is located in the old stockyard, in the old meat market. It's actually fascinating when you look back at it. It was an incredible innovation. So at the time, this was a place where tourists would come to watch slaughterhouses. But what they were coming to see was the fact that in this place, it was absolutely fascinating. You could butcher a cow in 40 minutes. And it doesn't sound that exciting, but it used to take 9 hours. So this is the place where the modern meat industry was invented. And it was then copy and pasted as a blueprint everywhere across the world. But it's also the place where it was understood and developed food technology. So the craft, everything from the McDonald's, it's here. It happened in Chicago. So Chicago really defined modern food, not just for America, but really for the world. And I think we tend to not think about it, not realize that. It is actually phenomenal. And you're hearing that from a French guy. And you know how we think about our food, right? So it's
a Frenchman has something celebratory to say. That's cause for celebration.
Absolutely. I haven't started to complain yet.
Fun fact, those two meat companies, Armour and Swift, that were here in meat packing, which we're all sitting in right now, we tried to pay homage to those two companies by naming a steakhouse Armour and Swift, and I was sued by the Armour food company.
Were you?
But the Swift family's still around, and they said yes, and Swift and Sons, Armour and Swift became Swift and Sons, which was a real drag because the Armour and Swift was already in the marble, and we had to tear it all up, but whatever.
Your heart was in the right place, Kevin. Thomas, will you explain what Nature's Find is and does?
So I'm completely unqualified to talk about food and to run a food company. Let me just put it up front because I need to be clear about that. So our company started as a research project for NASA. And the goal of the initial research had nothing to do with food. It was about trying to figure out if NASA was going to send a probe to a moon of Saturn or to Mars, how do you even look for life there? We know life here, life on a moon of Saturn, we're not quite sure. So trying to answer the question took us to a place that's a little bit different than the rest of planet Earth, which are the acidic volcanic springs of Yellowstone National Park. And we discovered about a dozen of new to the world life forms that are very old, very ancient actually. And they are microbial life form that adapted into these springs. And what's fascinating about these life forms is a bunch of things. First of all, they learn to do more with less. And I cannot think of a better definition of what we need to do, of our generation needs to do. We need to learn to do more with less. And so as a company, we really took a page from nature's own playbook, trying to figure out how we could learn from these forms of life and learn to grow them using a fraction of the resources that you would otherwise. So one of the microbes we discovered is an incredible source of protein. It's actually a complete protein, which is pretty rare. There is not a lot of protein that are complete outside of the animal realm. It's not a plant. It's not an animal. It's part of that third branch of life that we tend to forget, and that's the fungi branch. So it's not really a mushroom. It's a microscopic mushroom, if you will. So it's 50%.
And it's edible.
It's completely edible. Yes, we went through all of the FDA approval process. So yes, it's completely completely edible. And we invented a new technology to grow and cultivate it. And we cultivate it today in the stockyard. We are the first company ever who launched both in the same time a meat alternative and a dairy alternative. So we launched a breakfast patty and we launched a cream cheese. And all of this is done in the stockyard in Chicago. And we use 99% less land, 99% less water, and about 94 less greenhouse gas emission than a cow.
Well, I really want to, that's awesome. I really want to talk about technology and how it's influencing all of your individual career paths. I was at the airport, I'm sure you've been there, where you are trying to get a quick sandwich and they don't want you to talk to anyone, they want you to order on an iPad now. Has everyone had this experience? I'd love to, on the side, I'd love to get your opinions on this, but I want to talk specifically about how technology is impacting what you're doing now and what you see as the future of using technology, specifically in restaurants with you two.
Well, I think that there's a lot of young people out there that when they're eating a meal as utility, they don't want to talk to a human being.
And that's sad.
You know what I'm saying? I'm even that way sometimes.
Are you?
And so I think that there's a separation between kind of what we do, which is supposed to be an experience, where somebody's coming to your table and they're actually concerned about making your whole experience better. What are you going to order? I know everything about the food that we're selling. I'm going to talk about it in a compelling way. And I'm also going to be charming and fun and all this sort of stuff, and we're going to create an experience for you. And then there's the fact that it's 11:45 and I'm busy as hell and I need to throw something down very, very quickly, and I want to hit a couple of buttons, and I want the food to come out and I want it to be ran to me. That kind of coincides with the fact that, guess what? We don't have as many people who want to work in the restaurant business as we used to. And so technology has to be the bridge between those things.
More with less.
More with less. And by the way, if you want to know who they're going to be talking about, 50 years from now, of the people that are on this stage, it's going to be him. So yes, in 2050, what's the stat? We're going to need 56% more food being produced than we have on this on planet Earth right now. And so the only way to do that is doing stuff like this guy's doing. So.
Well, can I just quickly add one thing? One thing about food and technology, to me, I'm obsessed about this. And food is the primordial technology of our species. It really is. Everything we invented at the early days, we invented for food. How we coordinated, how we developed social relationship to hunt together. How do we invent it? Why do we use food? It's the basis, it's the primordial technology of our species. Absolutely, everything. It was to procure our food. So there is no, a restaurant is a primordial place of technology by itself. Cooking, transforming the food, that is the first technology we ever did as humans. And I find that incredible, incredibly inspiring, and eternal. It's something we've always done, it's something we will always do. We will always eat. That's not going away. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Really good thing.
But I think we are at a juncture where there's enormous change underway. One is you referred to the labor exodus from our industry, right? It is a huge and real problem, not just in restaurants, everywhere. Distribution, manufacturing, farms, the gamut. And it is projected to just get worse. I have my views on how to fix that, but that's a different conversation. Yes. But as a result, some restaurants are trying to strip away as much service as possible to manage costs. So all the contactless, all the online, all the pay yourself, order yourself, the gamut. Some are actually leveraging technology to build value add. So creating experiences. Whether it is, think of the rudimentary cooking class with XYZ chef, or a art gallery thing paired with your food, or collaborative meals with multiple chefs. We've done it all, right? Those meal boxes, meal kits, what have you. It's enabled the industry to somehow patch together some struggle of survival over the last 2 years. It's also enabling our industry to go direct to consumer. So all the online, all of the ghost kitchens, all of that is because of technology. So I think there's a huge shakeout that's going to happen over the next 4 or 5 years, a huge consolidation. Many restaurants are not going to be able to survive, given the brutal margins and the labor situation. Let's see how it unfolds.
And what do you think is the best? Meaning, when you see the next 5, 10 years, is there something that's either happening now that you say, yes, we'll see more of this, or is there something that's percolating that we're hearing about, or you're hearing about, that you definitely think is going to be on the landscape?
Well, I think most humans don't understand how much food affects their body and the ways it affects their body. I opened a private club in Chicago called Beyond. And the idea of it was that instead of it being the foundation of it being social, like Soho House, even though we still have social in restaurants, the foundation of it is medical. And we have 8 different doctors that are attached to it. And one of those doctors is a naturopath. And then we have an integrative blood work doctor who's a full-time internist that's there. And we connect the dots between your blood work and then wearing a glucose monitor and your sleep patterns. And I'm 52 years old. I have slept terrible my entire life. And I have figured out, for the first time in my entire life in the last 6 months, how to sleep 8 hours. I slept 3 or 4 hours a night my entire life, even when I was a little kid. And just watching how food affects me and how it affects my glucose levels, it's this diagnostics test that you can do on your body now and look how everything affects you. This is gonna happen more. It's gonna affect how people eat. Once they attach their happiness and their sleep patterns and their mood and all these things to the food they eat, it'll change the way everybody eats.
Kevin, where did the inspiration come from Beyond, and where did that start? I mean, this had to have been in the works for years.
I think I had a couple edibles that night, and no, it's just a joke. No, I actually was driving back from a bad hospitality experience, and I pulled in my driveway, and I was just goofing around. I was writing down, if I had a private club, what mine would be like, and I was like, I have a private yoga instructor, and I go do float therapy, and I have a psychiatrist, and I go to an integrated blood work doctor, and I go to do the Northwestern Executive Physical, and I love to listen to records. We have a listening room in there with 2,000 records in it. So we have a nap room with a Haston bed in it. We have a huge restaurant that's super healthy, but your doctor also is in the space. And so I called my friend who's the CEO of a publicly traded company who is really into wellness and a black belt in karate, and I said, Joe, remember a few years ago you wanted to open up a Chinese medicine clinic? What if you weren't thinking big enough? And he goes, talk to me. And by that next morning, we had met for breakfast, and a month later he resigned from his job, and we just started working on it.
So it started as a dream. It started with you saying, what if, and kind of imagining a dream scenario.
Whiteboard spitballing, what if one place had all this stuff inside of it.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Rohini, I'm really fascinated by how you started Let's Talk Women and how you really began this entire venture into not only supporting women restaurateurs and women in the hospitality industry. Where did that begin for you?
So Let's Talk Women, most of you will not know it, but I hope you will soon, it started with 15 women restaurateurs in Chicago. This was in the throes of the pandemic, July 2020. Remember those lovely days when we didn't know how to get toilet paper or hand sanitizer or masks? And we were mandated with running our restaurants safely and taking care of our employees and taking care of the customer and all the liabilities that come without any testing or anything. And so this is after, of course, being closed for 4 months and racking up debt. So this was me reaching out to 15 women restaurateurs to say, how are you coping? Because unfortunately, unlike the Kevin Bains of this world, or even the Rich Melman, restaurant group, or 50/50, or I can name 10 others, most women-owned restaurants tend to be either 1 to 3 units. And so we need that support. We're each other's group. The 15 of us proved to be so viscerally useful to each other, purely on a business level, how to help each other's businesses, that we said, let's make this about promoting and scaling our businesses together. And now we are 65 of us in Chicago, wow. All women-owned businesses in food and drink. And we are 600 of us in 13 cities in the country, all within a year and a half. So that's innovation. It's born out of technology. Zoom was our godfather. I'm the godmother. And it's been magical. Magical. Not only have we been each other's comrades in arm to enable each other to make it through this year and a half, but what are sources of financing? Who's your HVAC guy? Because I've been thugged on the HVAC front for 20 years. Or let's do this event together, an event with the city of Chicago, or with Choose Chicago, and showcase 50 women restaurateurs together as opposed to one. Get our visibility, cross-promote each other. So it's all about boosting our top line and bottom line, and now we've started working with corporations for their events, with business forums who want to showcase our unique model of competitors coming together to collaborate.
And what is it about bringing women, solely women together? Not because, you're friends with Kevin, he'd be more than happy to help you, but there's something really special about other women helping women. And can you put into words just how powerful that is?
I would cringe to use the word sisterhood. It just sounds cliched. I've never been maternal all my life until I had my own kids. So just shelve all those stereotypes of women being the wanna give, nourishing, all of that. This is about survival and boosting each other's businesses. And we have a credo. I call it B Cube. The first B is no bullshit. So we never bullshit each other. You'll never find us saying, oh my God, my business is like a 40% EBITDA, when it's not. That's number one. Number two is no bureaucracy. We are flat. We are peers. No approval process, this, that. It's everyone from Michelin-starred restaurants to hole-in-the-wall startups. So this is real live mentoring in some sense. And the number 3 is breakneck speed. We try all sorts of collaborations with each other. Everyone can put forth an initiative. If it works, great. We transfer it across our 13 cities. I'm very anal about that. Every city is led by 2 to 4 women co-hosts. And if it doesn't work, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
By the way, before the pandemic, everybody was killing it all the time. Nobody was ever vulnerable. That was actually one of the silver linings of the pandemic is you could actually ask another restaurateur and they would say, this is terrible right now. Before that, everybody was so busy.
I wasn't.
Great point. Yeah.
I want to be. So guys, VERMILION.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot more real as a culture and as a society, for certain, for better or for worse. Let's talk a little bit about Nature's Find. You know, when it comes to innovation, Kevin tells his story of really coming home after a hospitality event, whether it was good or bad, and writing this down, a dream scenario. And Rohini talks about really the necessity of other women helping women, specifically with their businesses. Where does Nature's Find fit into this, and what would you say is the inception for the innovation?
Damn, that's okay. You guys remember the old movie from the 80s, from the 90s, Officers and Gentlemen? You remember the scene with Richard Gere, and the drill sergeant is trying to break in, and he wants to join the Marines. He's like,
I got nowhere else to go.
exactly.
Kevin with the clutch line.
There is nowhere else to go. And I deeply believe that. I mean, it's really how I felt. I was at a point in time, I used to be president of a large multinational packaging company. And what was I going to do? You know, put more plastic in the ocean? Is that really what I wanted to, you know, that was going to define me? And just to be clear, I was not, you know, I was kind of already looked like what I'm looking like now, right? I was like a middle-aged bald guy. What am I going to do? And I had nowhere else to go, so I did it.
So it was self-reflection, and it was a chance to really do something
It
for the
was a
world.
chance to think about, don't wait for the cavalry. You know, like, who else is going to do it, right? And this was a point in my life where I had kids. My daughter was 2, my son was just being born, literally. And it kind of hit me that it was not about me anymore. Like, I ask my mom, she doesn't care about me anymore. She just want to talk to her. Anybody who's seen grandparents with grandkids understand that. So if you don't really matter, you better make sure that you can be of service in a way for the next generation.
I love that.
And I think that's really where it came from. But it also came from an almost naive belief that technology actually can solve issues, that technology can be a force for good. We love to say bad things about technology, but look, I mean, we wouldn't be here without the electricity, I mean, it's the magical part. And I think it kind of put me on a journey to try to figure out how I could partner with people, who I could build things that could have a positive impact. So we'll know at the end of the movie, you know, if that worked or not. You don't know while you're in the process of building, but that's the journey.
We're all waiting.
There's so much power in being naive.
Yes.
So much power in it.
Yes. So speaking of being naive, 27 restaurants in 30 years. Wow. When you look at the landscape of your career and all the restaurants that you have brought to life, first of all, what do you think, and I mean this is a sincere question, what do you think has been the reason for your longevity in the business and your success?
First of all, fun story. So my two...
Kevin, be careful. I'm taking notes.
First of all, fun story. My 2 college roommates One of them was Dave Eggers. Do you guys know who Dave Eggers is? Any hands out there? Finalist for the Pulitzer, wrote 2 Tom Hanks movies, 10 best-selling books. And my other roommate was Mike Hopkins, who is the last American astronaut in space and was the commander of the SpaceX mission. So I am the loser of that trio. So I'm in college one night, and Dave Eggers looks at me and he goes, "Do you really want to be a lawyer?" And I said, "No, but I really want to own my own restaurant." And I said, "But it doesn't really seem realistic for a guy from Springfield, Illinois, who doesn't have any money." And he goes, "Kevin, Mike here thinks he's going to be an astronaut." So with some help from push from both of them, I actually went out and chased what I loved. I mean, I'm super freaking blessed because I actually went after something that I had actual true love for. So I think that is really why it's probably lasted that long, is that I'm actually in love with the business and what I do. Now, I have fallen out of love with it, and I fell out of love with it in 2020 and 2021, I'll be completely honest with you, but I found myself, I just opened a restaurant in New York, and it's with a great chef named Michael Solomonoff, who won the James Beard Award for Best Chef in America and Best Restaurant in America. And him and I bonded during the pandemic, and I go, "I got this opportunity in New York. Do you want to do a restaurant with us?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was just up in New York for 2 weeks.
Guess that's how it happens, huh?
Sometimes it happens that way, and I can't remember how much, the last time I had that much fun. He was just like, "Bro, I'm on the pass tonight, you're on the floor, let's do it old school." And every day I woke up and I just was opening wine and seating people and bussing tables, and that's my sweet spot, man. And so making sure you find yourself back where you started and what made you fall in love with it in the first place. And for me, it was talking to people.
Yeah, and you really like the nitty-gritty of the business, both the front and the back of the house, and you're willing to do it no matter if it's your 30th restaurant or your first. Rohini, I'm really interested because it takes so much to have a restaurant, to open a restaurant, to sustain a restaurant, but you clearly have a passion for helping other restaurateurs that has become an advocacy and a vocation, it appears to be. I'm wondering, with everything that you do, what do you think you are uniquely good at?
Okay, that's a curveball. What am I uniquely good at?
Well, you wear a lot of hats, you do a lot of things well, but what is, of all the things you do, what is most uniquely Rohini?
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm really passionate about and enjoy doing as well. And I think I'm good at it, but I love creation. So for me, the fun part is coming up with the new stuff, whether it's the new design or the business plan or the menu or the interior or the relaunch, or even with Let's Talk Women, new initiatives, new cities. I detest operations. That's the grunt work, and you have to be good at both to make it a success. And so, that being said, my first love, which I think is what I'm best at, is policy.
Policy.
I came to the US to work at the World Bank. That was my dream ever since I was 12 years old. I did work there. I came to feed the world. I have no idea how I got into upscale dining. So I'm hoping for my 5th career, I can do the whole loop and go back to development economics and policy, because I will write an op-ed at the drop of a hat. I'd rather do that than be on the floor.
That's great, though. That's really interesting.
Well, it's funny. Ernie Johnson, the great commentator from TNT, talks about things I got to do and things I get to do. And for most of us in the world, in order to get to the things we get to do, we have to do the got to do's.
Yes.
So there's a veritable smorgasbord of got to do's in the restaurant business that we wake up every single day. And there's a bunch of stuff that I don't like, but I do it so I can do the get to do's.
Well, one of the get-to-dos is this, moderating this panel with you 3 talented people. So first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you. I did want to leave a few minutes in case there was any questions from the audience. We have exceeded the time, which I knew we would, because...
Playing the part of Phil Donahue will be...
Is there anyone who has a question for the panel of any sort?
It's always so depressing when there's no questions.
Oh, there we
Hey,
go.
there we go. He bailed us out.
Thank you. You mentioned ghost kitchens earlier, and I was wondering if you could maybe make some comments in terms of what are ghost kitchens doing to the brand and to the entire process of what you do.
Well, it's an interesting concept. You know, it's not really my business, ghost kitchens. I like to be the exact opposite of ghost kitchens. I want to bring stuff to life. I don't want to create a concept that is just there to, you know, market 12 restaurants out of one space. That being said, I don't fault anybody for taking advantage of it. It can be a pretty smart thing. But what you get a lot of times is very homogenized food. They're all coming out of the same kitchen designed by one person, and I think it just makes food a lot less interesting from my standpoint. But listen, it's hard to make a buck in this business, man. So if that's what gets you there, God bless.
It's completely stripping the brick and mortar away from the business of restaurants. That's essentially what it is, right? Disintermediating the food from the service element. And so it can be a boon to many restaurateurs. So you can treat your kitchen like a commissary and have 4 concepts and maybe 3 times the revenue or 4 times out of your one location. Or it can be huge competition at prices you cannot possibly hope to match. And we all know that food delivery is booming and growing. And so it's taking huge shares of that. In fact, food service, food distributors are getting into that game as well. So it's quite interesting to see who we're going to be competing with down the line. It's a threat for the brick and mortar, definitely.
Great, thank you, Rohini. Is there anyone have another question? In the back.
Great job, by the way. Moderator and panelists, thank you very much. It's been very inspirational. So going into a post-pandemic culture, what is the greatest opportunity now for all of you to reinvent what you're so used to over the past decades?
Sorry, I missed that last part. Could you repeat?
Going into a post-pandemic culture, what is the greatest opportunity for you guys to grow and potentially reinvent all of your businesses moving forward?
I think for the first time in a long, long time, restaurants are in a bit of a catbird seat in certain areas because traditional retail is going away a little bit, is not as strong, and so developers still need restaurants to rationalize their development. So what I tell great operators out there right now is they need you, man. Negotiate those deals. And these 20 companies that they keep going to ask to do management deals everywhere can't keep doing them. And people need diverse food, interesting food. And if you can get paid on top line and bottom line and not have to put an investment up, I think that bodes well for the future of our industry.
For me, it's leveraging collaborations. So I'm very enthused about, we've been in conversations with a bunch of people about doing pop-ups for, Vermilion is Indian and Latin cuisine. It's really not your, what should I say, rustic Italian, or it's a very niche play. But what we're going to do is pop-ups across different cities with our Let's Talk Women, and they will do the same with me and vice versa. So we'll take brands national. We're getting into products together. So I'm very enthused about what lies ahead.
I just want to give a quick shout out. Tom Kuzmarski mentioned that he came into Boca 20 years ago. Him and I might be a little bit older than we were 20 years ago, but he still has the same youthful exuberance and passion that he always does, and that's why the Innovation Awards is so impactful and still around. Please give it up for Tom Kaczmarski. And I just wanted to add to your question, I think what the restaurant business is going to have to be moving forward is a kinder, gentler business. My first day ever as working in a restaurant, in a real restaurant, there were some traumatic things going on with my family back home, and I was telling somebody about it on my first day, and the manager took me in the office, and he goes, I'm only going to say this once, leave your baggage at the door. Wow. 3 days later, I got a pan thrown at me by the chef, and so that's the business that I entered. The business now has to be completely different, and we have to show the same hospitality that we do to other people, to the people that work within our four walls. And so I see that as a win-win for everybody.
And I would just add that I feel like, as someone who loves restaurants and is in them for work, interviewing people, and seeing a difference in the demeanor of staff than 2 or 3 years ago, a distinct difference. I think what Kevin said is so important, that the need for great hospitality has always been there, but now, wow, is it needed. The people are lonely and they're starving for connection in a different way. So I see an opportunity to rise to the occasion and to really make people feel at home. So that's what I would say. Any other questions?
Do you want me to?
Please, Thomas.
So on the technology side, I think there is something that's a little equivalent as well. I think the idea of fragility of our world, our relationship, of all of that, I think was highlighted by COVID. And COVID has been the great accelerator of so many things. And when it comes to food supply, between COVID, when, remember the time where you couldn't get not only the toilet paper, but also the meat, right? The collapse of the meat. We saw the collapse of the meat. Now, what are we seeing today? We're seeing the collapse of wheat in Europe. We're seeing the spectrum of famine for some countries in Africa and Asia because of what's happening. So what we're realizing now, which we kind of already knew but forgot, is how fragile our food supply chain actually is. Mm-hmm. It is not a given that there will be food for everybody always going forward, especially when there's going to be 10 billion of us. We just don't have the resources. So I think in terms of opportunity, there is a lot to do around taking that, understanding that, seeing how you can be part of a solution with others. And also one of the phenomenal opportunity here, building on the demand side of that, is to see how young people are shifting their eating habits. Not everyone is going to become a vegan. That's not what it's about. What it's about is people being more mindful, especially the younger generation, around the choices that they make with their food. And they're really voting with their plate, I think, and they continue to do that with the choices that they will make, whether it's at the restaurant or at the retailer. The purchase decision on food are much more thoughtful than they were.
Thank you. And thank you to all three of you. This has been so fascinating, really. I've enjoyed it. And I hope you have too. Round of applause for the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And also a round of applause for you as well, Kate. Thank you all. Before you leave, just some closing remarks. I think I speak for everyone in saying you are incredibly inspiring, and that was a fun hour to listen to all four of you. The conversation was, it started about food innovation, but it actually ended up being a lot more than that. And I feel like I, reflected my own sweet spot, Kevin, that you were talking about, and their conversation was so authentic, and there was no bullshit. So thank you, Rohini. And Kevin, you started the cussing, so now it's just spread around to the group. But thank you again to our speakers. Thank you to our audience. We exist to spotlight innovators, and this is the proof that Chicago is a hub of food innovation. And we look forward to seeing you again at some more of our events in just a few weeks. We're going to move from the taste of innovation to the sport of innovation. So I know that's another passion we'll be tapping into. It'll be at Wrigley Field on June 27th. Some great speakers. If you're into sports innovation, we hope to see you there. And even if you're not, Boca Restaurant Group is catering it. So for the food enthusiasts, a reason to come back for that too. So thank you all again, and I hope to see you soon.